Hello, everyone. Today we will be presenting on governance in higher education. Governance in higher education refers to how colleges and universities are managed and operated. Our topic focuses on articles Globalization, New Education Governance and State Capacity in East Asia by Kai-Ho Mok, and an analytical framework to the cross-country comparison of higher education governance by M. Dobbins, C. Mills, and E. M. Vottel. Our group members are Ikra Khan, Jiwi Shi, Mohammed Youssef, Purnor Bala, and I, Femi Nelson Nash. A brief look at what we will be covering. We will first introduce the topic and its background, then provide the universal features, then move on to the state role versus state capacity, how the issue is experienced differently in different parts of the world, connecting current events to professional experiences, questions raised about the issue, and then we will conclude our presentation. Our presentation will show how the Bologna process has significantly influenced policy conversions in higher education across Europe through structured communication and benchmarking, highlighting the role of transnational networks in its attempts to spread best practices and achieve a cohesive European higher education area. It will also show how globalization influences higher education governance in East Asia, leading to an entrepreneurial and market-oriented reform. Despite pressures, states adapt by selectively adopting global practices, strengthening their governance capacity and maintaining significant influence over higher education reforms. Universal features. Reduced public funding, economic globalization, and the rise of private institutions are common drivers of change in higher education structures globally. Universities are adopting entrepreneurial strategies to cope with reduced state funding. There has been a rise of private institutions and a shift towards market-oriented reform. Governments are transitioning from direct intervention to roles that facilitate market conditions. I'll pass it on to Ikra Khan.
Thank you, Femi. Another universal feature both articles discuss this is how resulting from globalization, higher education institutions are driven towards a more market-oriented approach, where universities are also adopting entrepreneurship strategies to maintain relevance. This shift reflects the influence the global economy has on the goals and operations of higher education institutions. The Moak article expands on how in an increasingly globalized world, while East Asian countries' public higher education institutions are facing funding cuts, the public is expecting institutions to do a better job preparing students to increase their competitiveness in global markets. Institutions are also turning to partnering with industries and other educational institutions to enhance their global standing. With cuts in fundings, institutions are participating in entrepreneurship as a way to potentially generate revenue. Similarly, Dobbins et al. Described the vision for higher education governance in Europe towards having more diverse funding when faced with funding cuts, and promoting strategic ties between universities and industries to ensure the anticipated demands of the labor market are met. For both articles, we see how globalization is a factor that drives higher education systems and governance towards a more market-oriented approach, promotes collaboration and competition on a global scale. Passing it on to Purnor.
Thank you, Ikra. And then now tying in the universal features and the main points addressed in both articles. Overall, though there's a trend towards marketization, governments still play a crucial role in higher education governance. As both papers highlight, the quality and the type of governmental influence are more important than its quantity, which is described as the state role in the Moak article and the amount of influence in the quotes above in the Dobbins article. Understanding the difference between the state's role and its capacity is important for informing assessment standards and improving effectiveness in governance. Being able to identify state functions and objectives clarifies governmental aims and helps define dimensions relevant for assessing governance across institutions and countries. Over to you, Mohammed.
Thank you, Purnor. Regional differences in higher education governance, understanding autonomy, and government oversight. Through these articles, we diving into a fascinating world of higher education governance and how it varies across the globe. We will explore 4 key regions: East Asia, Europe, Latin America, and the Middle East and North Africa, MENA region. From a global perspective, do you know that higher education governance is shaped by history, culture, economy, and politics? These factors influences how universities operate, get funded, and the social role. For instance, historical legacies affect institution autonomy, cultural attitudes shape education and government intervention. Economic conditions dictate funding models, and political structure control state oversight. In East Asia, governments have a strong control on higher education, shaping policies and operations. But there is also a shift toward market-oriented reforms. Take China, for example. The government controls university, but also encourage them to innovate and find new funding resources. Asserted by Mock, in China, the government heavily influences university operations, but also encourages institutions to seek additional funding resources and engage in entrepreneurial activities. Europe strikes a balance between state oversight and university autonomy, although this varies by country. The Bologna process is a major initiative in standardizing higher education and promoting mobility across Europe. Example, Germany enjoys high academic self-governance while France has more centralized system. As stated by NIB, Europe higher education governance tends to balance state oversight with institutional autonomy. Latin America faces challenges in higher education governance due to political and economic instability, affecting funding and quality. These trends towards privatization, but responses vary from different countries. Example, in Brazil, universities adopt entrepreneurial strategy to compete with reduced state funding, raising concern about equity and access. As stated by Brunowski, in Brazil, higher education institutions are increasingly adopting entrepreneurial strategies to cope with reduced state funding. In the MENA region, political instability and economic consideration shape higher education governance. Government oversight varies widely. The Gulf states, invest heavily in higher education, while countries like Egypt face significant resources challenges. Example, Gulf states are investing to diversify economy, whereas Egypt struggles with funding and infrastructure, affecting education quality. As stated by Bucknell, the level of oversight can vary widely between countries in the MENA region. Comparative insight. Governors' models differ widely across regions, tailored to local contexts. There is no one-size-fits-all approach. Each region's unique history, culture, economy, and policies deeply influences the governors. As stated by Clark, the level of autonomy and government oversight in higher education is deeply influenced by regional context. Overall, higher education governance varies significantly around the world. Understanding these differences is the key to improve global education systems. By recognizing and respecting these regional differences, we can develop more effective and contextually appropriate governance model. Back to you, Gurnur.
Thank you, Mohammed. And now to connecting current events to professional experiences. Reductions in federal funding and as an example of governance in higher education, which can lead to lower admission rates for international students, for example. It can also impact smaller institutions more than larger ones, as they may be more at risk for being able to secure external funding. It can also put pressure on government to seek out external funding sources for institutions. Alternatively, funding from private sources, which can come in the shape of endowment or philanthropy, can also impact funding opportunities for a specific academic year or class of students. An example of this is the Faculty of Medicine, which received external funding for the fall 2023 academic year in light of the changes in the stipend policy. This led to an increase in entrance scholarships for incoming students in the fall of 2023, which is grossly different in the amount of entrance scholarships for other years. Another example is also India's transition to a 4-year bachelor's degree, which has been introduced to meet admission standards for foreign universities. This has direct implications for the Bologna process and is also an example of an Asian country responding to larger global influences. Another sort of more domestic change in governance or response to higher education is the recent changes and revisions to international student intake in Canada, especially at the private institution level. This has been done in response to strategically answering national concerns, which can help benefit the domestic students and international students. Over to you, Zhao.
Thanks, Bruno. Now it's my part to raise some questions. In an era where globalization and technological advancements rapidly reshape the landscape of higher education, governments face the critical challenge of balancing the needs to adapt to global trends and pressures with a preservation of their cultural, educational, and national identities. So firstly, let's consider how governments can preserve national identity within their higher education system while adapting to global trends. It is essential for educational policies to incorporate elements of national history, culture, and values within the curriculum. This can be achieved through mandatory courses on national heritage and the inclusion of global or local languages and traditions in educational programs. Simultaneously, embracing global trends such as international cooperations, exchange programs, and the integration of cutting-edge technologies can enrich the educational experience and prepare students for a globalized world. Ensuring equitable access to higher education, particularly for marginalized or underrepresented groups, is another paramount concern. So our second question is, how do countries ensure equitable access to higher education, particularly for marginalized or underrepresented groups? Firstly, governments must implement robust policies that provide financial aids, scholarships, and targeted support programs to these groups, and moreover, establishing inclusive admission policies and creating a supportive campus environment are crucial steps towards that too. And our third question is, as government's models might change, are there mechanisms to ensure quality standards in higher education? If not, what mechanisms could be set up? I also put forward some possible mechanisms here, such as national bodies, regular audits, and transparent evaluation processes. These all can help ensure that institutions meet established quality benchmarks. Additionally, fostering a culture of continuous improvement through feedback from students, faculty, and industry can also help. Our fourth question is, with the increasing involvement of markets and industries in higher education governance, what is the role of these actors in higher education governance? Do they impact issues like affordability, quality, and academic freedom? And lastly, to ensure the long-term sustainability of higher education system, how can higher education system implement strategies for this? Here are some possible strategies. Institutions should embrace flexible learning models, such as online and hybrid programs, to accommodate diverse students' needs and leverage technological innovations. Investing in lifelong learning and upskilling programs can also help institutions stay relevant in rapidly changing job market. Now I'll pass the mic to Femi to draw the conclusion.
Thank you. Our exploration of higher education governance reveals two distinct narratives: the Bologna process in Europe and the influence of globalization in East Asia. Both regions showcase the importance of adaptability and collaboration in higher education governance. Europe's structured approach through the Bologna process and East Asia's entrepreneurial strategies highlight different ways to enhance higher education systems in response to global pressures. These efforts underscore the balance between adopting global practices and retaining local governance capacities to achieve sustainable and impactful education reforms. By understanding these frameworks, we can appreciate the diverse strategies employed to navigate the complexities of higher education governance in a globalized world. Thank you for listening.